I'm Vrinda. By now, I am sure some news relating to the electoral bonds has reached you. Our Twitter timelines are flooded, our WhatsApp groups are inundated with messages, our Facebook feeds are also probably talking about the same. But it's important to remember where this information is coming from. Who are the people who've been behind, who've kept behind the electoral bonds case, and who have been working to ensure that this data reaches to you. Over the last few years, reporters, journalists like Nitin Sethi, and then organizations like the Reporters Collective, Wire, Scroll, News Minute, News Laundry, Caravan, all of these have been working consistently at getting to the root of what constitutes electoral funding in India today. And so yesterday the Election Commission released out data, tons of data, at which these same journalists have been working at through the night and have been working to ensure that reports get out in time and reach you. In the middle of all of this, it's also important to look at what the mainstream media has been doing in this time period. It's pertinent to remember that independent journalists who've been churning out reports since last night and also over the last few years do not have the same kinds of resources and funds to carry out the kind of reportage that they have as compared to the mainstream media. But if we compare the kind of work that has emerged from such independent organizations, the mainstream media really has a lot to answer. On your screen now you can see the headline from today's Indian Express: Who paid the parties? A fairly vague headline which clubs all of the political parties together. This headline does not call out the fact that there has been one party which has been the whose brainchild the electoral bond scheme has been. The electoral bond scheme was brought by the BJP in 2017 and since then through the data that was available till before yesterday and the data which has come out since clearly reveals that the biggest beneficiary of the scheme has been the Bharatiya Janata Party. It doesn't mention the fact that other opposition parties like the Congress or the RJD or the JDU or tons of other parties, that they do not stand anywhere near the kind of near the BJP in terms of the donations that they've received. In terms of any idea or conception of a fair, even ground, the electoral bond scheme fails. Another headline that is again on your screen now is that of Times of India. It says EB electoral bond bumper, lottery king Santiago #1 bond buyer. The electoral bond scheme has really been a bumper scheme for the BJP, but the headline fails to mention that. Again, it does mention it does mention in a small headline that BJP is the clear leader, but it does not specify the fact that the BJP was the party that introduced the scheme. But before we move forward, it's also important to mention here that every newspaper has its own editorial line, but our concern today here is to also look at what is the reader's right. What information is reaching you and in what format? It's not enough to just mention or to give it some space on your front page. It's also about what is the quality of the information that is reaching you. If you go through Twitter and if you just look at the kinds of material that has been put out by chartered accountants, by lawyers, by unnamed citizens, you'd be surprised to see this difference between the kind of information that these newspapers are giving to you versus the ones that they are. They've gone through troves of data and also linked events over the last 5 years to establish patterns that are still under investigation, but none of the same seems to have been attempted by these newspapers. Moving on, I'd like to look at Dainik Jagran, the biggest Hindi daily that is circulated and is also the group which got the maximum ad revenue over the last 9 years. If you look at I'll just hold it up for your convenience. The front page of Dainik Jagran is just an ad, the cover page. If we move to the front page, you will see that there are a bunch of clippings, none of which in any form or manner mentions the details of the electoral bonds. There is nothing here which even hints that this is going to be covered on any page inside the newspaper. We really tried to. I really went through all of the smaller headlines, the smaller clips, but there's nothing really which says that the newspaper is going to cover anything. If we move ahead, we'll see that there are full page ads of the BJP. There are also some ads of other political parties. I remember there was an ad of the Aam Aadmi Party. And a half page ad, yes, a full page ad of the Aam Aadmi Party, Bhagwant Man's government. There's another ad which, yes, there's a full double page ad of the Uttar Pradesh government. And mind you, none of these pages, the pages that have just gone by, have any news relating to the electoral bonds. So you have to turn a lot of pages. The editorial, which again doesn't mention anything on the electoral bonds, but it features a full page ad of the BJP government again, the PM Vishwakarma scheme. Then you keep turning the pages, you find more advertisements. There's an advertisement here. This is the election coverage page, and there is no mention of the scheme. You have to, yes, this is the sports section, and this is page 23. In a newspaper which has 24 pages, on page number 23, you have this one small column which tells you that there has been some news pertaining to the electoral bonds that has come out. Again, it's not enough to just mention, to publish a news item. You have to compare it with the kind of information that people on their own, journalists with meager funds, have been working on to publish and to bring out in the public domain. For instance, this report doesn't tell you about the fact that there have been connections have been made between the way in which these parties donated funds to, in which these companies donated funds to political parties, and the fact that they've also faced investigative action of enforcement agencies. It also doesn't tell you again that BJP has been the biggest beneficiary of the electoral bond scheme. Another paper that I'd like to bring here is Amar Ujala, a strong contender in terms of the Hindi news readership, particularly in northern India, Uttar Pradesh. It has a front page advertisement of the Congress party. Moving on, again it has another ad. This is the front page of Amar Ujala, which does which does give some space to the news that came out last night. But again, it's important again to remember what the information is, what the nature of the information is. If I compare this to what the Jagran put out in its 23-page report, you'll find that nothing much is being conveyed to you. And that is probably the disservice that mainstream media has done to you. These newspapers cost you money. Every month you churn out some few $100 for these newspapers. But they are actively working at ensuring that information does not reach you. This is not just misinformation, it's creating a vacuum of information. If you compare this to the work of independent journalists who have worked through the years in spite of of government scrutiny or threats to their life, you will see that the mainstream media has not enriched your lives as citizens in any form or manner. So what do you have? What are you left with? I think it's important here to also put to good use the digital space that you have an access to. Go to Twitter, follow journalists who are working at bringing out this information for you. You have our channel, you have Ravish Kumar Official to always come to. We've done 8 episodes by now on the electoral bond scheme, and we'll keep at it in the coming few days. There are other journalists and media institutions like The Wire, Scroll, Caravan. Of course, you must look at Reporters Collective, look at News Laundry, News Minute, and test for yourself what is it that these organizations are giving to you and what the mainstream media is not giving to you. It's very, very sad that with all the funds and with all the resources that English and Hindi and other languages, media organizations of other languages, TV channels, newspapers, magazines, that with all the funds and resources they have, they cannot bring you any quality information on a matter which not only concerns your electoral democracy but also your rights as citizens. So it's important to remember that there are other people out there who are ensuring that this information reaches you. You should try to support them, and also always be on the lookout for the kind of shoddy work that is reaching you in the form of morning newspapers every day. Till next time, this is Vrinda.